Now, in the wake of one of our most destructive hurricane seasons, WSAV Storm Team 3 preparing you for what's next. This is Stormwatch. What have we learned? Presented by your Touchstone Energy Cooperatives.
Hi there, I'm Chief Meteorologist Chris Allred, and welcome to our Storm Team 3 special. It was back in October when Hurricane Matthew roared into the coastal empire and low country. It tore through everything in its path, ripping off roofs, tossing around boats, and tearing down trees that had stood for decades. The storm killed 2 people in our region. Tonight we take a look back at stories from the storm, how we kept you informed, and lessons learned that could make all the difference when the next hurricane hits. Hurricane warning in effect for our coastal counties, tropical storm warning in effect farther inland.
The clock is going backwards.
We hit the set at 4 o'clock. We went wall to wall from 4 p.m. until 4 a.m. the next morning.
Stay indoors. This is only going to get worse.
We had lights and everything, and then all of a sudden in the middle of the live shot.
Later on, and you can also, and then as you can see, the lights just went out.
They want everyone who is still in town to hunker down.
Right now, I'm in Beaufort County at the University of South Carolina, Beaufort.
The biggest fear for everybody here seems to be the storm surge right now.
It's still very strong, actually so strong. I just want to step out of the frame so you guys can see.
Even after city leaders ordered a mandatory evacuation, some chose to stay and tough it out. Well, News 3's Andrew Davis spoke to some who look back on that decision and say never again.
There was an 8-hour period when it was a horrible decision.
A decision Mark Stuckert had to make on his own inside his Spanish Wells home, all while caring for his cancer-stricken wife and his son's 2 infant babies.
Because Joan was sick, we had come up with a hard stop. 11:15 Friday morning, it was a stay or go. Even if I'm wrong, we'll just leave on Saturday. Except that I forgot the trees were down from here to Cheyenne.
It was a silly decision. Never do again.
That's what Jeff Wilson says now, but as Matthew arrived, he stayed with his wife and 2 other couples in a townhouse right on the water on Harbortown.
We were thinking we're up way above the water, any water problems, and we in a concrete steel building.
They were projecting that the winds would be about the same as Hermine, so we thought it's not going to be that bad, right?
It sounds like a freight train. There's wind is rolling all over the place, and every pine cone and pine nut and pebble and rock is bouncing against the windows in the house.
It was about 12:30 when the power went out, and that's when I said, oh no, now we're in trouble.
When was it that moment of, okay, maybe this wasn't the smartest thing that I've done?
3:15 when I heard the tree hit the house. The tree hit, it was a loud crash, and the house shook.
What goes through your mind when you see the tree?
Uh-oh. This wasn't a good idea. You know something big is happening, you can feel something big is happening, but then when you have an opening to it, it sort of enhances it, it makes it a bit scarier.
We were bailing water because the water came from the north, had nowhere to go.
We were shoveling until 7 a.m., pretty much nonstop. The 3 of us with towels, brooms, mops, and buckets from the front out to our emergency exit, trying to just swish it down those stairs. Get everything moved back here, the rug folded up, and there was about an hour when we had direct winds that we were sort of hiding behind the sofa as the windows were bulging a little bit. I know that sounds odd, but it was just an incredible thing to watch the force of nature. Knock wood, we were safe, but it really was an amazing experience. I don't know I'd stay again.
I was incredibly overconfident in my abilities to understand how storms worked, my ability to react to the storm, and my ability to change my decision later. That overconfidence, fortunately, didn't hurt me.
Hurricane Matthew not only taught some homeowners a lesson, but emergency management officials in both Georgia and South Carolina learned they needed to make some important changes too.
With hurricane season on its way, the Chatham Emergency Management Agency is working to stay ahead of the storm.
During Hurricane Matthew, we realized that we could gain greater efficiency in both timing and traffic management if we decided to split the larger of the two zones.
New this year, Sawyer says 2 zones now split into 3 along the Truman Parkway.
Zone A is this section right here, including Osabaw Island. This is going to be Whitmarsh Island, Wilmington Island, Skidaway Island, and of course Tybee Island here in Evacuation Zone A. This yellow section is going to be Zone B. That's going to include Port Wentworth, Garden City, most parts of Savannah, downtown Savannah, stretching all the way over to the Bryan County line over here. And Zone C is going to be this purple section up here, which is going to be most parts of Bloomingdale and some parts of Pooler.
But what if you live in one zone and work in another?
You are going to evacuate with the zone in which you live.
Destiny Moore and her family live east of I-95 and evacuated before Matthew struck. She says she welcomes the new changes. In the face of disaster, as Seema learned with Matthew, preparation can be key to survival.
I don't think that things necessarily didn't go well. I think that we found ways that we can improve in efficiency and we can improve in general.
We want to start preparing now. We don't want to wait till an actual event come and then try to, put things in place.
With the start of another hurricane season, preparation is South Carolina's biggest priority.
We cannot stop the hurricanes from coming, or any kind of storm, or earthquakes or floods, but we can be prepared.
State agencies hit the streets up and down South Carolina's coast Wednesday morning to practice evacuation lane reversals. Here in Beaufort on Highway 278 and 21.
We're just doing the exercise. We don't actually reverse the lanes, but once we get the actual traffic in there, things happen because the people not used to driving on the opposite side of the roadways. At this particular time, you can drive on the wrong side of the road. That's what we want you to do, so we can have all the traffic flowing in one direction.
Jones says evacuation ran smoothly for Hurricane Matthew, but with only 2 ways out of Beaufort County, it's important to keep practicing.
We get new people in new places, so we just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. This is a joint operation.
But it's not only practice that makes evacuation run smoothly. It's also the residents.
People, they didn't wait to the last minute. When they started heeding the warnings, they started evacuating, which was a good thing, so everybody wouldn't try to leave at the same way. So that helped us out with the lane reversals.
Lane reversal is only used for evacuating. When it comes time for re-entry, it works best if people follow their assigned zones.
People coming back in, if you come in during the time when your zone is allotted to come in, that will help get traffic in a reasonable amount of time.
Reporting in Beaufort, Stassi Olmos, WSAV News 3.
Well, now that you know about the new evacuation procedures that are in place, you need a personal plan. Here is Storm Team 3 meteorologist Kyle Dennis with a step-by-step guide on getting out.
Well, that's it. I'm heading out of town. Chris Allred just said there's a hurricane coming, and she nailed the last one, so I'm not going to take my chances. Evacuation, it's a pain. There's no way around it. You've got a lot to pack. You've got to find a place to go. You've got to get the house ready. The good news, though, is with a little bit of planning now, it can save you a lot of stress later on. I'm going to go ahead and pack my suitcase now, but time is of the essence. The storm's approaching and I've got a lot to do. I could have saved myself some time had I done this at the beginning of hurricane season. A lot of us have extra clothes that we get rid of every year. You can just throw those in a suitcase. You'll want about enough for a week, and that's something you can do in advance. Almost forgot. Probably want to have my passport, birth certificate, proof of residence, any of my important documents, and keep it near the suitcase so that it's all in one spot. I may need that stuff when it's time to come home. I went ahead and printed my maps like it's 2002, but you know what? When a hurricane's coming, sometimes these don't work. Cell power goes down, your battery dies. It's always good to have a backup. I got these maps right on WSAV.com. Now that I've found my evacuation route, I need to figure out if I'm going to go to a hotel, stay with a friend, or find a shelter. So now it's time to make some phone calls and book where I'm going to stay. Before I leave, I got to get my home ready. I've already put plywood on the windows in case the winds blow out the windows, but I've also got to get my loose furniture outside put away in the shed. That's it. I'm all packed up. I'm on the road, hands on 10 and 2. No one wants to leave their homes during a hurricane, but most of the people that didn't leave during Matthew have said that they regretted the decision. They would never do it again. The important thing to remember is you can replace things, you can't replace people. Now, I only touched on some of the steps you may need to take should you have to evacuate during a hurricane, but everyone's situation is different. We've got a lot more great information on our website, WSAV.com. Just check out the Hurricane Central section. Unfortunately, there's not a real emergency right now, so if you'd excuse me, I'm going to go grab a cup of coffee. Headed to the coffee house, I'm meteorologist Kyle Dennis.
Storm Team 3's meteorologist Kyle Dennis just gave you advice on the steps you need to take before you evacuate. Now News 3's Courtney Cole and meteorologist Ariella Scalise have advice on the steps you need to take to prepare your home and your pets before you leave.
I'm News 3's Courtney Cole, and when a major storm approaches, you have a lot of things to take care of in a really short amount of time, and usually your house is right on the top of that list, and that's why today we're talking with Chelsea Sawyer of SEMA. She's going to get us started and tell us some things that we can do to prepare our home. Hi, Chelsea.
Hello.
So now tell us where we should start when it comes to preparing our home for a hurricane.
Well, one of the first things that you need to do is prepare your yard. So you'll need to look at your yard debris. So one of the major things that you're going to want to do when you're preparing your yard for hurricane season is to go ahead and look at all of the debris that's just sitting there. That's going to be the first thing. Go ahead and pick that up, recycle it if you can, or do the best that you can with getting it out of your yard so that it won't fly into your home or fly into your windows. That's a huge concern. Also, take a look at your trees. You're going to want to look at all the trees that are surrounding your home, even within your neighbor's yard, that could impact your home. But a lot of people are putting out pebbles, putting out stones, even bricks to outline certain trees or certain things that they have in their yards. Those can easily become projectiles during hurricane season and during a big storm. Even some of our thunderstorms, those could be pretty dangerous.
And it's something that you don't think about because you're like, you're trying to beautify your home and you're thinking, okay, I've taken care of the trees, I'm cool. But you're right, those things could easily go right through a window, right through a car window, or...
Absolutely. So that's something to consider too. You just mentioned windows. That's going to be the next step in preparing your home for a storm, is checking your windows and doors. You see a lot of glass doors here in Chatham County, which is strange to think to have a glass door. But you're going to need to reinforce that and protect those. So a lot of people will think about putting shutters up. A lot of people would even consider putting up plywood when it comes to the time to evacuate or when a storm is approaching.
And another thing too, we have some pretty useful items here. Some of the things that would be in an emergency kit, which is important to start getting ready now and not the day before you're trying to get out.
Absolutely. We always recommend that you have an emergency kit on hand. These are just some of the items that you could use in your emergency kit. You're going to want blanket and comfort items, even some toys or some objects for your kids or pets to play with as well. Of course, you're going to want water. Now, this is just a sample of the amount of water that you want. You actually want a gallon of water per person per day. Of course, you're going to want your food. And when we're without power, a weather radio and a flashlight would come in very much in handy.
Awesome. Well, Chelsea, you have been super helpful. I know people are going to be able to hopefully take these facts, use them, and be ready just in case.
Anna Walker of Ellabelle, Georgia, didn't think twice when it came to evacuating her family last October.
We packed them up and we just drove west. We didn't know where we were going to go or what we were going to do. We just knew we had to get safety.
Safety first, but also organization. Anna says staying organized is key when you have so many in a household.
Today I have 7 animals in my house, 2 kids and a husband, and I would do it all over again.
When the Walker family evacuated for Hurricane Matthew, they had an infant and a toddler, plus a cat and a dog. Now their family has tripled in size, but it's nothing a minivan can't handle.
I would put the 3 dogs probably in the back seat. You can lay down the 3rd row. I put the dogs there. The cats, they're really great. You don't have to put them in carriers when they're in your car. They will sleep underneath the seats.
When you are packing the car, Anna says to make sure the food is accessible. A good spot is right between the driver and passenger seat. What's the Walker family's favorite road trip snack? Cereal, of course.
Cheerios are a great food for dogs and for kids because they're easy to pack, you can stick them in your pocket, and they're a low-calorie snack.
The car is packed and you are ready to go. While several hotels have pet-friendly accommodations, make sure you call ahead. Also, it's important to have a copy of your pet's medical records with proof of up-to-date vaccines. This is just one of the many items you should keep in your emergency supplies and traveling kits.
If all of a sudden I got a phone call today saying, hey, you have to leave tomorrow, I know where everything is, that within minutes I could have my car packed up with the necessities.
The necessities include 3 to 7 days worth of food, pet feeding dishes,
disposable litter trays, plastic grocery bags for pet cleanup, and extra leashes and collars with ID tags. For a full list of items to put in your evac pack, head to WSAV.com and search pet evacuation.
Hurricane Matthew took us by surprise. We did not think we were ever going to need to evacuate, but guess what we did?
Plan for the worst and hope for the best. Staying organized and being prepared is key when it comes to evacuating with your pets.
My pets are my family. They are my kids. If you wouldn't leave your kids behind, you don't leave your pets behind.
For WSAV, I'm meteorologist Ariella Scalise.
The biggest fear of Hurricane Matthew was a storm surge, and the prediction was somewhere between 5 and 10 feet, and that is why evacuations were mandatory. But as it turns out, the storm surge was less than expected, but it was enough to shut off Tybee for the entire day as they inspected for damage here at the Bull River Bridge. Now, coming up after the break, I'll tell you why we were lucky this time.
We were concerned even a week ahead of time.
I believe it was Wednesday that I actually was running down the hallway to my news director, Kevin Brennan, and I was like, you have to come to the Weather Center and look at the models right now. Right now. For those who live along the coast, there was a mandatory evacuation as there was a threat of flooding, and not just from the rain, but from the rising of the ocean water. Run from the water and hide from the wind. Hurricane Matthew hit Savannah with the biggest storm surge since the 1800s. A storm surge that flooded homes and streets. Any water get in at all?
There was a little bit that actually just came in through the back door. Came in right through here and probably came in about baseboard high. Not in the whole room. It wasn't like the whole room was flooded though. It was just like, I guess it was part of the surge maybe that came in.
So when you came home, actually, was it still damp?
It was still damp.
Rob Wilson and his family have lived on Wilmington Island for more than 10 years in an area expected to flood. So when evacuation orders were issued, they did more than just get out.
We moved everything that we could that was reasonable, and we moved it up here to this floor. I'm glad we did, just because we did get a little bit of water and not much.
While Fort Pulaski recorded the highest level ever, the storm surge wasn't that bad in most areas. Now, when it comes to this wind-driven water, the outcome has to do with a lot more than just the storm's category. There's the shape of the coast, the expansiveness of the wind fields, how fast the storm is moving, and finally, the angle of the storm's approach. And the storm surge is usually the most dangerous threat of a hurricane, but with Matthew, our greatest flooding came from heavy rain. And no two storms are the same. So while Rob's family only saw minor damage, he's seen firsthand what a storm like this can do. And he knows that preparing now is the key to recovering later.
One thing we're all familiar with during hurricane season is the forecast cone of uncertainty, but there are actually a few misconceptions about what it really means. So let's look at how the cone is determined. First, 5 points are drawn along the expected path from 12 hours to 120 hours. Then a circle is drawn around each point. Now notice the width of these circles gets wider as you go further out in time. And that's because its size is based on a 5-year average forecast error at that time period. The area swept out by the circles gives you the cone. So what does this mean? Well, it means the cone is only predicting the future location of the exact center of the storm. It's not taking into account the size of the storm. The width of the cone is fixed each season and ironically actually has nothing to do with the uncertainty as it pertains to a specific forecast of a storm. The problem with this, if you want to call it that, is that it can lull people into complacency when they see their area is safely outside of the cone. Being outside the cone does not necessarily mean you are not in danger. In fact, oftentimes it doesn't mean that at all. So consider two scenarios, a fast-moving hurricane and a slow-moving one. The faster storm will appear to have a narrower cone, but it's only because the circles are spaced out more. Both of these cones have the exact same width at their widest point. So what that means is even for a perfectly accurate cone, a relatively large storm can still produce major damage well outside the cone. Take a look at this storm. Notice how as it rides up the cone, the center of the storm stays over the cone, but it can be very large and impact an area well outside of the cone. So the moral of the story is just looking at the cone of uncertainty is not enough information to determine the possible danger of a storm to you, your family, and your property. But the good news is that's why we're here, to fill you in on the rest.
One box, 4 pitchers, 1 machine. That's all we needed for our semi-unscientific test. A fastball 70, 80, 90, 100 miles an hour, simulating hurricane force winds. We started with 1/4-inch plywood right from the shelves at Lowe's, just like you'd use to board up your own windows. Look out, you're officially in the danger zone. Just like the storm itself, you never knew where the balls were going, but after a few tries, Cooper George made an impact and more.
There it is. I didn't think I threw hard enough to break it, but I guess I do throw hard.
One ball, a perfect circle. As we shorten the distance, we estimate he was throwing about 80 miles an hour. But we can't stop there. Now it's time for Fungo Man. The pitching machine cranks it up to 90 plus and makes hole after hole after hole.
But what if you were in a hurricane? What do you feel about that? If you were throwing, 70-mile-an-hour winds and something flew at you that way?
I'd be scared.
The end result, a big mess and not much protection. So let's go bigger and stronger, a 1/2-inch board. The boys fire over and over without any luck, only one crack.
I think it's pretty cool how, plywood could hold up against like 70-mile-per-hour winds, 60, 80 even.
Where man fails, machine takes over.
That's 80% of Fungo Man, so that's probably
95 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And even at 95 miles an hour, the plywood bent but didn't break. But once we got into triple digits...
There it is. So you started at about 90 miles an hour.
Right.
Didn't make a dent.
That's right.
Kept tweaking up and tweaking up.
We get over 100 and then it starts tearing stuff up.
Tearing it up and tearing it all apart. It held up better, but still no match for the machine or this simulation of Mother Nature's fury. With the dirt still fresh on the camera, we wanted to see what our players think of those hurricane winds now.
People throwing 80 miles per hour can't break it. I mean, I feel safe with plywood over my windows.
Yeah. What about at 90 or 100?
No. Probably want to move out.
If you're ever in a hurricane or something now, would you feel safe inside a building with plywood on it?
Yes, I would.
Really? Mm-hmm. Even though you watched Fungo Man go through?
Yeah, I'd probably be leaving the area if it's that fast.
But 120 miles an hour, you need to have real hurricane shelters. You need to evacuate. You need to take it serious. Hurricane winds are no joke, so be safe.
Safety first, because you aren't made out of wood and you break just as easily. Andrew Davis, WSAV News 3.
My job is to keep everybody calm and keep them informed at the same time, but also to help folks realize that this is a major event, that this is serious business. I'm thinking, this is really happening.
Now, before a hurricane hits, it's important to know what your insurance plan will and won't cover. And when you do return to your home, the steps you need to take after evacuating. Here's WSAV's Joanne Merrigan and Trish Williford with more.
What was the thing that seemed to shock them the most?
Well, the hurricane deductible, obviously.
On a warm summer day, it can be hard to think about last year's hurricane, but State Farm agent Pat Parker says you need to talk to your agent before the storm.
People want to be more informed now because they were kind of, I don't want to say caught off guard, but they don't understand their policies until after the fact. Hurricane coverage is covered within most every policy we see here in Georgia. So that would be one policy.
So the first thing to remember, in a named hurricane, your homeowner's policy should cover much of the damage, but you will have a hurricane deductible, and it's quite a bit higher than for regular claims.
Most people now have a hurricane deductible, and because this was damage as a result of a named hurricane, the higher deductible applied, which is usually a % of the amount that your home is insured for. So a $250,000 home with a 2% hurricane deductible at a $5,000 deductible. I've seen as high as 10%. So I mean, it depends on each individual company. It depends on a lot of different scenarios.
Parker says Matthew turned out to be a huge wind event that downed trees.
There would be coverage to remove the tree from the house, and then there's some debris removal that comes in as well to haul it away.
But he says find out for certain if your policy covers storm-related winds.
We have seen a few homeowners policies that exclude wind coverage. Okay, they're few and far between, but we have seen those, especially with a company that's not used to writing in this area. But most of your national companies, when you have a homeowners policy, there's coverage for wind, of which a wind event could be a hurricane, and that would be covered.
But what if you have a lot of rain and water comes into your home?
A hurricane policy doesn't cover flood.
It does not cover rising water from an outside source.
Parker says in many cases people buy a separate flood policy, which is offered through the National Flood Insurance Program. Your agent can help you buy that, but it does take 30 days for flood coverage to kick in.
As we get into September, October, and November, we get into the really active season. So it's understand your policy now.
Joanne Merrigan, WSAV News 3.
Hurricane Matthew forced Andy Resende and Steve Schulte out of their home for 5 days. They took refuge at a friend's home in Pooler to get out of the powerful storm's path. And once Matthew blew over, anxiety set in.
So we had no idea what to expect. We never gone through this before.
So we were expecting the worst. You know, trees down, not being able to get into the front door, water in the house.
But when they finally returned home,
it looked like a war zone.
We had at least 6 pine trees down. One of them fell on the house in the back. And the neighbor's oak tree fell on the privacy fence.
For 5 days we didn't have power, and for 2 weeks we didn't have internet.
Resende and Schulte say they were emotionally unprepared when they returned to their damaged home.
So the pine tree fell from here, landed on the corner of that roof, and sort of bounced.
But they were thankful it wasn't worse. Well, in the days following Matthew, there were a few things they were not prepared for.
Everything on the county was under curfew, so restaurants were not opening, grocery stores were not opening, so people were starting to get a little frustrated.
There were several things they did right following the storm.
And so we were the first ones to file a claim, so we got everything sorted out very quickly.
Chatham County Emergency Management Agency offers these re-entry tips to keep in mind when returning to your neighborhood after a disaster. Your home and surrounding area may not be safe or accessible. Know where you will stay if you can't go home. Review your insurance policies. Know what you will be required to pay. Keep extra funds available. Restock your emergency kit. It should include a 5-gallon bucket filled with non-perishable food items, water, medication, and other supplies. Trish Williford, WSAV News 3.
If the worst happens again, the Recovery Center will be activated. That includes a phone bank to answer questions and help guide you to the resources you need. We'll be working to help with donations of supplies, clothing, pet food, etc., just like we did last year. We'll also have the WSAV Recovery Center Facebook page to link people who need help with people who can help. One example of people helping people was when a neighbor came to the station to tell our reporter Martin Staunton about hurricane victim James Brown.
This is the site that brought 68-year-old James Brown to tears. He had no help to get this pole off his 16-year-old car. Brown says he spiraled into despair about his situation.
That day, it was one sad day I ever had. Yep. And I was crying. What going on in the world here? Like nobody don't love me, what I did wrong, everything.
We were able to get Georgia Power to move the pole, but the car was crushed. Brown has worked at the landings for 31 years as a cook and a dishwasher. A former co-worker saw his story and arranged to intervene.
A situation like this
where you think you got problems and you see somebody else's, it's really overwhelming.
And I want to point out that you made a point that initially you didn't even want to be on TV about this because it's not about publicity.
That's correct. We didn't want any kind of publicity for it. It was just, you see somebody else's problems and you think you got problems till you see theirs.
Rinkin Chevrolet gave Brown a free car in great condition, and they let me pull it around to surprise him. The fully loaded Mercury Grand Marquis fits the bill. Brown checked the oil and was impressed by the size of the trunk.
Get back there and sit down, man. Go to sleep. Lay down. Okay, what about the tag?
We'll get all that taken care of for you.
Brown says this is a brand new experience for him.
I ain't never had nobody give me nuts. I earned everything I did.
So what does this car mean now?
Mean a whole lot for me. I can get back to my work, A and B. Anybody needs some help, let me know. I will kind of help you out in what I can do.
So what's the first thing Brown did with his new car? What else? He drove to work.
Looking back, it's amazing how our communities became one, how so many people individually or as part of an organization put their lives on hold to help others get their lives back. One of the most gratifying ways in which the WSAV recovery effort played a role involved the families at the Westlake Apartments.
Hurricane Matthew is gone, but the need still exists.
On Friday, the Savannah-Chatham Public Schools and Communities in Schools transformed the Woodville-Tompkins Gym into a packing station for students hit hardest.
Each student will get 2 uniforms, 5 pairs of underwear, 5 pairs of socks, a bag of school supplies, a bag of personal hygiene items, and a voucher from Goodwill.
The goal is to pass supplies out to more than 100 kids when they get to school on Monday.
We've had things come from Augusta, Statesboro, all Effingham County, Hinesville, all over the place.
All donations assembled by volunteers like Woodville-Tompkins senior Zakai Deacon, who got the call to come help from his principal.
I was raised to help, so give back to the community, that's what I want to do.
Because he was spared from severe damage, Deacon wants to help those who weren't so lucky.
We're coming together and it's beautiful.
With a majority of the supplies coming to places like here at the Westlake Apartments, families will finally be able to get some much needed relief after the brunt of Hurricane Matthew.
We just want to help our students to make sure they're in school on Monday, ready to do business, and know that we are here for them and their families.
Restoring peace, one piece at a time.
I don't own a house, so I don't know what it feels like to have a tree on my house, but I know I can help. I can move some water and, wear a smile.
In Savannah, Meredith Stutz, News 3.
I'm going to step out of the way so you can see that there are crews, there's even a police officer out here.
One thing that I really, truly also am proud of is the fact that I live in a very loving and giving community. I got a chance to see people come together like I'd never seen them come together before. Giving food, giving clothing, doing whatever it took to help someone. And I think it speaks volumes.
For some, Hurricane Matthew was a wake-up call. City and county leaders in the coastal empire and lowcountry learned lessons they hope will make a big difference if a hurricane hits again.
Hurricane Matthew left a lot of destruction, but from evacuations to evacuation routes, there's been plenty of evaluation and maybe even some soul searching at SEMA.
In Chatham County, our evacuation clearance time is 36 hours. So even though we did experience challenges, we still were able to get everybody out within that 36-hour time period. So it verified that our evacuation clearance time is sound. Well, I think the biggest lesson learned is we can't evacuate the specialty population simultaneous with the general population. We did that during Matthew, and it presented several challenges for us.
Dennis Jones, the head of SEMA, says specialty populations include those in nursing homes and hospitals with possibly serious medical issues. If there is a next time,
there's some populations that are frail enough that we don't want them stuck on I-16 in a long evacuation period.
Jones says the plan now would be to evacuate the specialty population a full 24 hours before the general population. When it comes to many of us leaving town on our own, evacuation routes have been revamped.
During Matthew, we had 2 evacuation zones in Chatham County, with I-95 being the splitting factor.
Now, 3 zones have been created. Everything east of the Truman Parkway toward the islands is the first zone, or Zone A. Then the second, Zone B, is the Truman to I-95, where the majority of the Chatham County population lives. And finally, everything west of 95 will become the third zone, Zone C.
So I think in the future, if we take a look at those 3 zones and be smart about zone management, I think we can get better efficiency out of the evacuation process. During a hurricane threat, when we issue an evacuation order, we encourage you to leave early. If you leave early, you're not going to have the hours and hours and hours of travel time trying to get to your destination.
Joanne Merrigan, WSAV News 3.
When many people saw the images of Matthew's punch for the very first time, they said it was like a bomb went off. Sheriff P.J. Tanner uses that expression too, but he felt the hit before the first gust of wind.
The social media bomb went off, not only prior to the storm, but post-storm, and that pretty well caused us the majority of the problems.
Tanner says his staff simply was not prepared for the confusion that would stem from social media.
I think that failed big time.
And blames it as the root of practically every problem with the reentry process into the county.
And people were hearing what they wanted to hear. Oh, it's okay to return. I just saw Fred on Facebook. There wasn't a branch in his yard. The sun was shining. I'm going home. And when they get to the roadblock, they say, hey, wait a minute. I mean, my neighborhood's clear.
Matthew's evacuation and reentry was the first the county's handled since 1959, and it brought obstacles they had never faced. While getting out of town was seamless, Tanner said. Their main focus now is getting on one page with one voice, so coming home,
Because the line keeps going and going,
isn't such a headache.
Kind of channel Facebook and Twitter and all the other outlets that are out there to make sure that what's true is said, and what's said is a combined effort with everyone that's involved.
In Beaufort County, Holly Bounds, WSAV News 3.
The internet, social media, and smartphones, it changed the way we were able to get and also receive information before, during, and after the storm. We were able to give live, constant updates and get back immediate interaction and feedback. So coming up after the break, we will take you inside WSAV and let you see how technology helped us keep you safe and informed during the storm.
It was undeniable that there were people starving for that sort of information. And it's so rare that we get to impart information that applies to every single person that's watching you.
Social media is such a huge part of our daily lives now. And Hurricane Matthew taught us what an important safety tool it can be. Just from October 4th through the 10th, we had more than 2 million individuals on our WSAV Facebook page alone. Social media became a huge resource for the many thousands who evacuated. Our coverage of the storm earned the Edward R. Murrow Award for Excellence in Social Media. Here now is your News 3 team talking about how social media changed the way we reported on the storm.
If you lose power and you can't watch us on TV, you can watch our live stream, but we just heard some people were having trouble with that. So we're Facebooking as well. Arielle is here. She's putting us on Facebook right now. Hey, Facebook.
Well, let's say that with social media, the time of the year, a lot of people are sick and tired of it because of all the political ranting, okay? But in situations like this, it proves that it has a really valuable spot in society.
Social media was the only way that we could do our job because we didn't have a laptop with us and we didn't have the ability to go live. So what was behind door number 3? Well, it was Facebook Live and it was Twitter. So we used every avenue that we could to keep people updated because people were hungry for information.
Facebook Live videos just one after another going, okay, now we're going to go into development and go here. We'll go to Sea Pines, we'll go to wherever we can, just to show people what it's like and give them a sense, because there was nobody on the island.
In TV, we always like to say it's a conversation. We always like to say we're in your living room, we're talking to you. But in today's world, the internet has made it a conversation. It's given it the possibility that with Facebook Live, we can still be broadcasting people, but they can text us, they can message us on that live feed, hey, you guys may want to check out this spot. Hey, please check out this spot. And sure, some of those are a little self-centered. We're not able to check out every spot. But you also get to see the reaction.
Hey guys, Courtney Cole here. Right now we are downtown Savannah on River Street, and this wind, you have to experience it to believe it. Actually, I can barely walk right now.
Facebook Live was probably my most important tool because you can talk to people immediately and they can see and talk to you in real time. Not that our live shots weren't awesome, but I think Facebook Live for sure was the most important tool I had, like the whole weekend and rest of the week.
For all the people who had gone home, they weren't by a TV set. They were in Aiken, South Carolina. They were in Columbia. They were, in Atlanta. They were in all these different places with their phones in their hands. Many of them searching through Facebook. And so, we started using the Facebook Live feature just a couple months before, and so it was all kind of new to us. But it was just a way to really, what I felt like, talk to my friends.
How does anyone think that the first responders, SEMA, police, fire, all of these people are going to get their message out if not for us?
We put ourselves in harm's way all the time, but we do that to protect. I mean, it's better one person be out there and showing you why you shouldn't be out there than everybody else being out there and creating mass chaos.
For Savannah, the last direct hurricane hit was all the way back in 1979 with David. So for more than 3 decades, hurricanes just harmlessly passed by. But that changed last October. So here's meteorologist Lee Haywood with a look back at Matthew, its track, and the impacts of the coastal empire and low country.
It started as a simple tropical wave moving off the coast of Africa. But as a disturbance tracked across the Atlantic Ocean, Tropical Storm Matthew formed. Then Matthew became a hurricane in the Caribbean Sea. It was here that the storm reached extremely dangerous Category 5 strength. After hitting Haiti, then Cuba, and the northern Bahamas, it was our turn. Matthew paralleled the southeast coast for 36 hours, gradually weakening while remaining just offshore our coast. We faced evacuations, power outages, widespread damage, and flooding. At Fort Pulaski, a storm surge of just under 8 feet was recorded. Fort Pulaski also set a new record tide level, beating the old record that was set back during Hurricane David in 1979. Top wind gusts during Hurricane Matthew include 96 miles per hour at Tybee Island, 88 miles per hour at Hilton Head Island. Also, we had wind gusts to 83 in Beaufort, 79 miles per hour at Fort Pulaski, and Savannah at the airport, 71 miles per hour winds. Now, when you factor in rainfall amount, greatest in the local area, 17.5 inches at Savannah Hunter Army Airfield. Interestingly enough, it turns out that's the highest amount anywhere in the southeast coast during the hurricane. Also, additional amounts include 14 inches in Beaufort and 13.5 at Hilton Head Island. Then across Georgia, downed trees and power lines led to more than 370,000 customers without power. In all, 34 people died along the southeast United States coast, and more than 550 were killed in the Caribbean, making Matthew one of the deadliest storms on record. And the cost of the total damage, a whopping $10 billion. I'm Storm Team 3 meteorologist Lee Haywood.
I would describe Hurricane Matthew as a wake-up call. As bad as it was and as much destruction as we saw, we only got brushed with the eyewall. Just imagine a Category 4 or Category 5 making an actual direct landfall. It can, as bad as it was, it can be even so much worse.
For many of us, the memories of Hurricane Matthew are still fresh in our minds, and no one wants to repeat that experience again. The problem is, it could happen again. So the question now, what is the prediction for this year's hurricane season? With the answer, here's meteorologist Lee Haywood.
This year's hurricane season is expected to be more active than normal. NOAA expects 11 to 17 named storms, 5 to 9 of which could become hurricanes and 2 to 5 which could become major hurricanes. Colorado State University also calling for an above average hurricane season with 14 named storms, 6 becoming hurricanes in the Atlantic Basin and 2 major hurricanes. The historical yearly average is 12 named storms, 6 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. Warmer than normal North Atlantic sea surface temperatures and reduced chances for El Niño's development are among the features at play this year. And it is important to remember the season is really just starting to heat up. Most hurricane activity occurs in August, September, and the first half of October. I'm Storm Team 3 meteorologist Lee Haywood.
For decades, Savannah has dodged hurricane after hurricane, but Matthew proved it can happen here. And if it happens again, we will do our best to keep you safe and informed. With the help of tools like our WSAV weather and news apps, our online resources like Facebook Live and our live stream, you can count on us to be here when disaster strikes. Thank you for watching Storm Watch 2017. Have a good night.